The Ja Morant trade saga has finally come to an end. He's headed to Portland for a package that might surprise you, and he's joining a roster that at first glance doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So why did the Blazers make this move? Does Ja actually fit the team? Can he get back to his peak level of play? And when you zoom out, what does this trade tell us about where the NBA is headed? In today's video brought to you by PrizePicks, we're going to break down everything. First, I want to talk about his value on the trade market, or rather a lack thereof. Just a few days ago, Brian Windhorst reported that Ja Morant couldn't be more available, while team after team stopped their pursuit of the star after failing to come to an agreement. Eventually, he got traded for Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray. So what gives? Of course, injuries are at the center of it all. He's played a combined 79 games over the last 3 seasons, an average of 26 per year. This past season, he dealt with a right calf strain that kept him out for about a month, missed a few more with a right calf contusion, before eventually being shut down after spraining his elbow, having only played in 20 games. With that said though, Ja's value didn't just deteriorate as a result of durability. It's what teams saw on the court that ultimately turned them away. Basketball is an incredibly physical sport. What that physicality looks like has changed over time. In the modern era, offensive players are allowed to do seemingly whatever they want to move a defender. It's only in the playoffs that defenses are able to fight back, and it's like an entirely different sport from the regular season. We're talking real-life, heavyweight battles. Who can fight through contact and survive? Due to the nature of playoff basketball, one of the biggest advantages you can create as a team is the ability to physically impose yourself on both ends of the floor. That can manifest itself in so many different ways, but there's a consistent theme. Size, length, and versatility are at a premium. The bar for talent and athleticism has become so high, not to mention how advanced both offensive and defensive schemes have become. As a team, you have to be able to cover ground against pace and space offenses. As a player, you have to be able to do multiple things at a high level to stay on the court. Or come playoff time, your weaknesses will be highlighted, and at times you'll even be played out of the rotation. While this era of basketball started as the pace and space era, it quickly turned into the era of no weak links. And that's on both ends. If you can't knock down threes, playoff defenses will get you off the court. If you can shoot but can't create off the bounce, defenses will run you off the line and force you to make decisions. If you can't defend on the ball, offenses will bring you up into every action and force you to make your presence felt. I want to focus on that last point for a second, because it's exactly why smaller guards are viewed in such a negative light nowadays. In a league where big, physical creators have a world of space to operate, rules enable them to use as much contact as they want, and schemes help them hunt for the weakest defenders, you either can't be a liability, or you have to be a nearly perfect offensive player. But as a small guard, that's extremely tough to do because you often aren't benefiting from the same physical advantages. Take Trae Young, for example. At the beginning of the decade, he burst onto the scene and immediately made a name for himself as one of the most talented pick-and-roll creators in NBA history. Between the pull-up jumper, his handle, use of pace, touch on floaters, and world-class playmaking ability, he was truly a one-man offense, capable of taking any cast to great heights. However, he always lacked size, strength, and explosive athleticism. So what happened is teams started to put bigger, lengthier, more physical defenders on him. They increased their ball pressure, they got sharper with their coverages, started bringing more aggressive gap help to attack his lack of length and force him to settle for tough jumpers. It's not that the pick and roll game got neutralized, just that it no longer held the value that churned out top 10 offenses like it was nothing. Then he didn't have any other way to impose himself. He couldn't physically overwhelm teams in isolation. He wasn't a dynamic off-ball threat. He often had to dominate the ball, which meant settling for inefficient shots to keep the defense honest, while stalling motion and creativity within the system. All of this while bleeding tons of value on the other side of the floor. Hence why when it came time for the Hawks to trade him, he was basically a salary dump. Now compare that to another small guard, Jalen Brunson. Defensively, he was also viewed as a weak point to attack, but he had a couple major advantages over a guy like Trae. Firstly, his strength. He's got a significantly stronger base that allows him to play physical one-on-one defense, bump creators, and hold his ground in different situations. Secondly, his execution of different coverages at the point of attack. The Knicks did a great job of hiding him with an aggressive hedge and recover scheme, which requires Brunson jumping out at the right time and angling his body to force a wide driving lane before getting back to his man. He did this time and time again to prevent offenses from letting them get him on a switch whenever they wanted. With all of that said though, the biggest differences between Brunson and Trae actually showed up on offense. Beyond Brunson being one of the most versatile shot makers the game has ever seen, his strength, balance, and footwork allowed him to physically impose himself on defenses at will. Teams couldn't just switch and keep him away from the basket. They couldn't just bring gap help and turn away his driving lanes. They couldn't just get aggressive at the point of screens and get the ball out of his hands. Maybe more importantly though, when the ball wasn't in his hands, he still found ways to add value with his movement, dynamic off-ball shooting, and even his ability to set really solid back screens. Brunson's dominant playoff run and eventual finals MVP honors weren't proof that you could build a champion around any small guard. They were proof that Brunson had separated himself from the pack and created advantages that plenty of other small guards couldn't. I bring all of this up to say, Ja Morant has found himself in a weird predicament. For the most part, the league has moved away from limited small guards. But does Ja land more on the side of a Trae Young or a Jalen Brunson? Before we get into that, I want to take a second to thank PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. If you know you can play responsibly and you have the means to do so, PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy app. So if you're looking for a place to get in on action this summer, use code HMA and get started. For today's WNBA picks, I'm looking at Thursday night's matchup between the Storm and the Mercury. We're rolling with the hot hands. Dominique Malonga's averaging 22 points a game over her last 5. We're taking her at 17.5. On the other side, Kalia Copper's averaging 24 points over her last 5. We're taking her at 18.5. And it's that easy. Find the stat you want, pick more or less, and you've got your lineup. If you sign up for PrizePicks with code HMA and play $5, you get $50 in lineups instantly. So download the app to get started, and let me hear your picks down in the comments. When Ja Morant took that major leap in the 2022 season, it was pretty obvious that we were witnessing one of the best slashers the NBA had ever seen. He moved like a running back, not just with the sheer speed and burst, but the change of direction, the way he'd cut in and out, navigate tight spaces, vary his stride length, and dice his way into the paint seemingly at will. These movements were made possible by a combination of freak athleticism and unbelievable skill. Sure, you have to be able to bend, twist, and explode into different driving gaps to do what he did. You also have to have the ball on a string, the handle to make these sharp, sudden movements while keeping a live dribble. You also have to have the touch to finish in a variety of ways, whether that means exploding vertically into the body of a rim protector, or using your length to step around defenders and find an opening to scoop it up from the floor, or stopping short from as far out as 10 feet and dropping in a beautiful floater. Ja had the entire package. He was a small guard who could dominate the paint. Here's a look at every player's scoring at the rim in 2022. From left to right is how often they attempted a shot at the rim, and from top to bottom is how efficient they were. Now let's limit the pool to only show guards. One name was a complete outlier. That's Ja Morant. This was a legitimate superpower. But even then, the most valuable part of his outlier slashing ability was the way he blended it with his passing. He had incredible vision and anticipation, just knew how to read defenses like a pure point guard and could make basically any pass. That's important because he also had the creativity to try any pass, which meant defenses had to go to extreme lengths just to limit his ability to create offense. And sometimes even that wasn't enough. There was a brief period of time where Ja Morant felt like one of the most inevitable creators in the sport. He was never the most efficient scorer or a super versatile shot maker who could punish defenses from all over the court, but because he had unlimited access to the paint, could finish in a variety of ways, and was such a good playmaker, he could impose himself on games like very few players, and even fewer small guards. The level of play he reached in 2022 had people wondering if he'd be the next face of the NBA. Little did we know, that would actually be the peak. Between off-court issues, injuries, and roster changes, it felt like everything that could go wrong for Ja went wrong. At the center of everything, though, was a lack of progression in his game. The deficiencies were always there. While he was about as good as you can get as a slithery driver, he lacked the size and strength to just go through defenders like you see with Giannis. So the pressure he could apply on the paint against elite playoff defenses always came with a ceiling. Then there wasn't anything else he could rely on. Teams would sag off, duck under screens, and invite him to take pull-up jumpers. He started to work on the mid-range game so that he could have an outlet to fall back on out of drives, but it was never something he could consistently go to, so if he got cut off or ran into a packed paint without a pass to make, he didn't pose much of a threat. Like I said earlier, defenses got better. They got bigger, longer, and more physical. They increased pressure, got more aggressive with their coverages, and got smarter. So in this case, a lack of progression is actually regression. Now add in the injuries, as well as the age. While he's still one of the best athletes in basketball, he's not quite as bursty or dynamic as he once was. As a result, he went from a guy who could generate 8 or 9 shots at the rim to just 6 in his last full season, and 5 in the 20 games he played in this most recent one. It's hard to overstate just how big that difference is. We're talking about 3 or 4 possessions a game that were layups or dunks, now being turned into worse shots, or just being funneled to other guys on the court. Naturally, that also means he's getting less free throws. Not anything crazy like the rim attempts, but still a tick down from where he was at during his peak. In general, this current version of Ja just isn't exerting the same sort of downhill pressure on defenses, which means they don't have to get as aggressive, send as much attention, and he can't create as much for himself or his team in the half court. Think about what that means for his on-ball game. You're left with a guy who isn't a threat to make pull-up jumpers, can't consistently access the mid-range, and instead of being an outlier slasher, he's just really good. The downhill attack and world-class playmaking still have lots of value, don't get me wrong, but it's not to the extent where you can build an entire offense around it and expect good results. He can't be a heliocentric, ball-dominant offensive player anymore. Much like I talked about with Trey, he went from a one-man offense to a great offensive player who needs to be a cog in a system. But unlike Brunson, you don't get the dynamic off-ball game. Over Ja's entire career, he's made about 33% of his catch-and-shoot threes. That's in the bottom 20% of players in the NBA. And like I said, it isn't something that's gotten better over the years. He's a small guard who defenses are actively okay with leaving open and letting take as many jumpers as he wants. What we haven't seen yet is whether or not he can find ways to leverage his athleticism into off-ball value. Think about what guys like Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper have done with the Spurs. Both are a lot bigger than Ja, and that matters, but they'll use their athleticism to counter different coverages by cutting into open space, stampeding into drives off the catch, or just crashing the offensive glass. Ja's still very fast, very quick, and very explosive vertically. I wonder if we'll see a team find ways to leverage that by using him as a screener or going to different floor alignments that make him a threat to finish plays at the rim. The problem is that in doing so, you're limiting his best skill, which is his downhill playmaking. Think of it like a double-edged sword. The best version of Ja is one that's dominating the ball, getting into the defense, and creating for his teammates. However, he can't do that efficiently enough anymore to justify building an offense around it. By taking him off the ball, he's a limited floor spacer who can't lean into his best skills, which makes it harder for him to coexist with higher-end talent and still bring tons of value. All of this while being a limited defensive player and making an average of $43 million over the next 2 seasons. So when it comes to Ja's value, it's easy to see why there weren't too many teams looking to bite, and why he didn't demand a big haul despite being a 26-year-old multi-time All-Star. Beyond the injuries, his game on the court isn't what it once was in a league that needs it to be, while being paid like a superstar. With all of that in mind though, that created a situation for the Blazers to buy low. They essentially got him on a salary dump, creating one of the weirdest, most unique, and most intriguing rosters in the league. If you were watching my videos throughout the playoffs or at any point over the last few years, you might notice that I'm finally sitting in a new chair. This is the FlexiSpot C7 Max chair, and I'm not kidding when I say it might be the best investment I've ever made to my setup. Whether I'm watching basketball, editing a video, or just recording like I am right now, I'm always in a chair. And the FlexiSpot C7 Max has it all. A height adjustable backrest, incredible lumbar support, a 3D adjustable headrest that can be tilted to the perfect angle. You can even kick your feet up and recline with a footrest for maximum comfort. Most importantly though, the seat is cushioned as well as the 5D armrest. I can genuinely sit here for 16 hours and never feel like I have to get up, because the C7 Max relieves fatigue from sitting for long periods. I wouldn't recommend that, but I would recommend the FlexiSpot C7 Max chair. It's made my life as a creator a whole lot more comfortable, and if you find yourself sitting at a desk a lot, I think it would do the same for you. The Independence Day sale is here. Shop now and enjoy up to 75% off site-wide. Use my exclusive code C750 to get an extra $50 off. Click the link in the description and enjoy these offers while they last. Once again, that's code C750 for $50 off at FlexiSpot. On paper, Ja Morant shouldn't work with the way Portland's built their team, but at that price, they'd be crazy not to pull the trigger. Like I said, although he's regressed, he's still one of the best playmakers in the league. He still puts pressure on the paint, he gets to the line, he creates for others, and there might be some untapped potential off the ball. There's also a small possibility that in this current day, he has more juice as a creator than we think. During that period of regression, the Grizzlies made one major change to their roster. They traded Steven Adams. Adams is the best screener in basketball. He's huge. He's ridiculously strong, he understands angles, and he had incredible chemistry with Ja. That's a huge deal for a pick-and-roll dominant creator. A big part of his downhill attack was that Adams could always clear his defender and create space for him to drive into, which helped produce, by far, the best scoring stretches of his career. During those 2 seasons, Ja played over 2,000 minutes with Adams and over 1,500 without him. We're looking at a very big sample. Every 75 possessions with Adams on the court, he scored about 4 more points while turning the ball over less. He shot more than 6% better at the rim and was 3% more efficient overall. That's a meaningful difference, and I want to compare it to his numbers in the 3 seasons he's played since Adams got traded to Houston. His scoring volume is slightly down, largely as a result of the dip in rim shot creation, but I'm more focused on the efficiency of it all. His numbers without Adams have largely remained similar. That also coincides with a shift in play style from the team. The Grizzlies went away from the spread pick and roll offense that defined Ja's peak. In 2025, they even experimented with abandoning the pick and roll altogether. That's not optimizing Ja's skill set, and I think there's a chance that Portland feels they can create an environment that leans back into his superpowers. That actually starts with Donovan Clingan. While there's nobody quite like Steven Adams, there are similarities. He has a huge frame, he sets massive screens. His focus in the 2-man game is about angles, making contact and holding his position, which is what Ja needs to turn the corner and get downhill. As a roller, he's not looking to get behind the defense and get above the rim on lobs. He's looking to use his body to create space for the ball and make himself a threat on the glass. Or he'll just pop out and try to create space for Ja that way. He's not afraid to let that thing fly with volume. But while we're talking about 3-point shooting, I question how much they'll be able to put around Ja. Last year, they made it a point of emphasis to shoot a lot of threes. Those opportunities weren't exactly going to the best shooters though. You had guys taking 5, 6, even upwards of 7 threes a game, but as a team, they only made about 34% of their threes, which landed them in the bottom 3 of the league. I think the return of Damian Lillard helps a lot. He creates a ton of space, and it sounds like they plan on starting him next to Ja in the backcourt. However, that does call into question some fit concerns. Dame is also a relatively ball-dominant creator. His game is also built around spread pick-and-roll setups. He's one of the most efficient on-ball scorers in NBA history. While he can be a catch-and-shoot guy, reducing him to that limits his value, in a similar fashion to how limiting Ja to more of a connective, play-finishing role takes away from his downhill playmaking. So it'll be tough to figure out how to balance the two. When to run through Ja, when to run through Dame, how they can play off of each other in certain situations. I do think that comes back to floor alignments. Dame is someone who creates 4-on-3 advantages almost at will. Clingan can make plays from the short roll. Ja can either play from the perimeter and serve as an off-the-catch slasher, or play from the baseline and make himself a threat to finish at the rim. On the other hand, Dame is somebody who gets guarded as far out as 30 feet away from the basket even when he doesn't have the ball. If they put him deep on the opposite wing, teams can't get as aggressive at the nail, and Ja should have space to access the middle of the floor. The fit, offensively, could work with the right attention to detail and game plan in place. The defense, however, I'm a little bit more concerned with. Throughout Ja's career, I do think he's gotten better at some technical aspects of defense. He's gotten better at playing with force, being physical. He's gotten better at reading offensive players, using his agility to cut off angles, and he's pretty good at fighting over screens when he needs to. Also, his athleticism allows him to make high leverage plays away from the ball. You'll occasionally see him jump a passing lane, make a great rotation, or meet someone vertically at the rim and forget that he's a small guard. But at the end of the day, he is a small guard. While the length and athleticism help, the lack of strength does not. He's still vulnerable in space. He still can't really switch on to bigger players. And he's still someone who offenses view as a target. Historically, the Grizzlies have used him behind the play. There's value in a point guard who can play free safety and legitimately make a difference, even if he doesn't have the highest motor or isn't the most attentive defender in the world. That only works if you can effectively hide him and keep him behind the play though. As soon as you stack him alongside another limited defensive guard, another limited defensive wing, and a slower footed big, it's hard to envision a world where the Blazers have enough versatility to lean into what Ja does best on that side of the ball. So you're left with a 2-guard lineup that can be attacked without elite coverage behind the play. All that's to say, the roster is pretty clunky right now. I don't think they're an elite offensive team, and they have quite a few concerns defensively. However, there's still a lot to like. The combination of Dame's three-point pressure, alongside the downhill presence of both Ja and Denny Avdia, that's pretty absurd. They should both consistently find themselves with advantages to attack off the catch. This team also has an opportunity to be one of, if not the best transition offense in the NBA. Last year, they made it a point of emphasis to get out and run, which is an environment that Ja has proven to thrive in. Their biggest issue last year was turnovers. Both Dame and Ja suppressed team turnovers through their abilities to carry a big offensive load and make tough decisions. This entire discussion, though, comes back to value. Not many teams were willing to take a chance on Ja at $43 million. The Blazers did, for a very small price. Whether or not he can get back to a peak level, or he's their franchise cornerstone, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I view this move as asset collection. Ja still has lots of talent. Their roster is loaded with guys who possess valuable skills. They're not looking to contend right away anyways. So why not make the low risk, high reward move and bring a 26-year-old former member of the All-NBA second team into the mix?